Pongo, Matt Tondle, and I am David Rosacker, Vice Chairman. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Fanslau, Planning Director, Eric England, Assistant Planning Director, Mike Carter, Current Planning Manager, Jennifer Taylor of the City Law Department, and Kathy Epperson, Recording Secretary. Our rules of procedure. Notice of this meeting has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front of us. You are welcome to come down and pick up one. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases have been recommended for layover, have already been heard, or are perceived by the planning board to be non-controversial. Therefore, they will be read and voted on without the opportunity for you to state your opinion on the case. However, if you wish to have the case discussed during the hearing, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. To do so, when each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed for discussion. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. This case will then be heard after we vote on the cases that remain on consent. When the case is heard, you will have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant, and after the applicant states their case, we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from opponents. After both sides are heard, the public meeting will be closed, and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select the spokesperson to present for that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones, as I stated earlier. Our discussion to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communications to the board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they can be made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder in this room. I think the agenda we have on the table is our final agenda, so there are no changes to the consent agenda. All right. Okay. I read this part too, don't I?
You already did, so you can start with the first case there.
Okay, so first of all, as I said before, we're going to do the consent agenda. First items will be on consent for approval. Number 4 is C10-24-204, C12-24-205. Applicants Charles Mangiamelli. It's on consent for approval. The request is for a preliminary plat approval of West Bay Woods Estates, a subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from DR to R4, laid over from our September meeting. The location is 18222 F Street. Anyone wish to remove this from the consent agenda? Seeing none, number 11, case C10-24-253, C12-24-254, applicant Lanahaw Real Estate, excuse me, on consent for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of the Elkhorn Center, a subdivision outside city limits, with approval of a waiver to section 53.8.4D, lot frontage along with rezoning from AG to R6 and MU. Location east of 204th and Shirley Streets. Anyone wish to have this removed from the agenda?
I do.
Okay, so case number 11 will be removed from consent, and we will handle that after we finish the consent. Just give me a minute here. Okay. Number 12, case C10-24-256, C12-24-257. Applicant Charleston Holmes on consent for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of Indian Ridge, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to R4. Location southeast of 204th and Ida Streets. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Seeing none, number 13, C10-24-258, C12-24-259. Applicant Shabbat Lubavitch of Nebraska, Inc., on consent for approval, request preliminary and final plat approval of Bel Air Village Replat 3, a minor plat inside the city limits with rezoning from R2 and R3 to R3, along with expansion of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. Location southwest of 120th and Shirley Streets. Anyone wish to see this removed from consent?
Chair,
Yes.
I'm gonna pull.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to pull off this item 13 and 24. Kind of have a small change in one of the conditions that's developing, so let's pull that off for the hearing.
Okay, so 13 and 24 will be heard after consent cases are finalized. Okay, number 14, C12-24-261, applicant Cell Properties LLC on consent for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of El Toro Plaza, a subdivision inside city limits. Locations 2405 Z Street. Anyone wish to see this one removed? Seeing none. Number 15, C10-24-262, applicant Catherine Frito on consent for approval. Request rezoning from R435 to R5. 4522 Brown Street is the location. Anyone wishing to see this removed? Seeing none. Item number 16, KC 10-2-262, applicant Edwards Auto Group, on consent for approval. Request is approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for West Dodge Station. Location is 18325 Cumming Street. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Seeing none, item number 18, KC 11-23-156, applicant Omaha Housing Authority, on consent for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the PUR, Planned Unit Redevelopment Overlay District. Location is 3005 and 3006 Emmett Street. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Seeing none, item 19, KC 7-24-246, applicant John Graves, on consent for approval. Request is approval of a conditional use permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit in the R2 district. Location is 2141 South 109th Street. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Okay, item number 20, case C7-24-247, applicant Tracy Sealine on consent for approval. Request approval of a conditional use permit to allow personal improvement services in the LC district. Location is 15240 West Maple Road. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Seeing none, item 22, KC 7-11-186, C7-24-250, applicant Pacific Professional Bowling LLC, on consent for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to a conditional use permit to allow medical offices in the LO district, along with approval of a conditional use permit to allow hospital services limited in the LO district. Location is 10707 Pacific Street. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Seeing none, that completes the list of our consent
For approval, we have
for approval.
one over.
Do you want to
Yeah,
do?
yeah, read the layover too.
Okay, so we'll read now the layover cases, which there's actually one. Number 17, case C11-24-248. The applicant Lawrence Butler, consent for layover. Request approval of a PUR, Planned Unit Redevelopment Overlay District, location northeast of 18th and Locust Streets. Anyone wishing to see this case removed? Seeing none. Do we have a motion for the consent cases that are on for approval?
Motion to approve agenda items number 4, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, and 22.
Okay, Kathy, will you take a vote?
Pate,
Yes.
Tondal,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved, 6-0.
We do the layover before we, okay, so now do we have a motion for the layover case?
Motion to lay over case 17. Second.
Kathy, please take the vote.
Tondal,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved, 6-0.
Okay, so then that next case then, after having dispatched those, we will go to case number 11, or item number 11, case C10-24-253, C12- actually, you're actually doing it. So anybody that is interested in leaving, you can stay or you can leave, whatever you'd wish. We'll move now to the rest of the agenda. Continuing on number 11, case C10-24-253, C12-24-254, applicant Lanahaw Real Estate on consent for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of the Elkhorn Center, a subdivision outside city limits with approval of a waiver to section 5384D lot frontage, along with rezoning from AG to R6 and MU, location east of 204th and Shirley Streets. May we hear from the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer and the applicant. With me today is Caleb Schneider of Lamper Nearson, the consulting engineers on this particular project. Since this was on consent for approval, I think we'll listen to the people that pulled it off to see what their concerns might be and then address those after we hear from them.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Are there any other proponents that wish to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents that wish to speak? Please state your name and address before your testimony.
Tim Flott, 1924 South 199th Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68130. So I live right on the corner of 199th and Cedar, which is just east of where the proposed apartments are being built. And one of the concerns that I'd like to get addressed is that street currently is a dead end. There's two other exits that go out to the south. But for most people in the city of Omaha, people travel Dodge Street. So there's potentially 26 or 24 units in each of the 4 units on the north. So for public safety, parking and access, and just the safety of the residents in our subdivision, my question is do they think that all the traffic's gonna flow to the south when most of the people go to Dodge Street to get to their place of employment? And how is that gonna be addressed for the people in our neighborhood? We have young kids, they play in the street, and to have that access route and have a lot of that traffic come through there, because we know that a lot of people will probably exit out of there, go down our street, 199th, head over to Pacific, and then head to Dodge Street. So we want to address that. The other thing I want to talk about is what are the price points for these units? And then is it possible if they continue on with that through street in the dead end there and through our neighborhood, is there something that we can put in place to maybe have speed bumps, some type of calming device for traffic? Because this neighborhood's been around for 20 years. It's been one of the quietest neighborhoods we've lived in. I've been there for 20 years. A lot of my neighbors have been there for 20 years. We've grown families, kids, and now it's turning over. There's younger kids, a lot of kids playing out in the street, playing in the area. So we want to make sure with all of these apartment units going in, that public safety is really going to not be affected by what's going on behind us. The other thing we're concerned about is drainage. How's that going to happen? Is it going to be adequate sewers? The other thing is there going to be a good buffer? There's talk on this plan, and it was really hard to see that we got in the mail. There's a 30-foot buffer, but what does that buffer entail? Is there going to be a privacy fence that's going, because most of the units that you drive around Omaha, if they're connected to a residential, there's a nice privacy fence for the residents. And I understand Lanahaw has a lot of trees and stuff, but most of the time when they put those trees in, they're not old growth trees. You're still going to have a lot of visibility. So we want to make sure that that buffer from us is not only going to protect our privacy, but it's also going to be a buffer that's going to be adequate because it's significantly changing our neighborhood from what it is today. It's a cornfield today. So we just want to make sure that those things are addressed. But the main thing really is speeding through the neighborhood and how do we address that and what things they can put in place. And then just making sure that we don't have any public safety issues that come along with that, and that we're still going to have a nice, scenic neighborhood that's been around for 20 years and will continue to be that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Any other opponents wishing to speak?
Hi, Nancy Bopes. I live at 1918 South 199th Street. I don't have a lot to add to what Tim already mentioned, but the one thing I would say is our subdivision, Shadow View 2, in order traffic-wise to get there, we're cutting through neighborhoods. So we're cutting through the Centennial neighborhood and we're cutting through this Shadow View 1 neighborhood. So if these exits from there appear to be going on the street, Cedar Street, as Tim had already mentioned, then that would just be adding to it when they're going to be cutting through our neighborhood and another neighborhood in order to even get out of the area.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Any other opponents?
Ryan Shaughnessy, 2026 South 199th Street. I've known these neighbors for many years. I guess I'm one of the younger ones. I've been there for 12 years. I got 4 kids. You know, when we bought the house, what attracted us obviously was the fact that we knew we had safety. We knew that we had a nice neighborhood. We knew that obviously that backyard was something that many people don't get the opportunity to have they have neighbors in the backyard. And so to have a cornfield, we knew eventually sometime in the future that would be changing. But I got to tell you, getting this letter last week was like a kick in the teeth, if I can be honest. It's a kick in the teeth because what they're putting behind there is totally changing the landscape of our neighborhood. And I can tell you, there's a lot of people hurting right now, and we're frustrated. We get this letter, and it's like, well, I almost came down here thinking, does it even help to come and share my voice? But I still will share it. I think how they did it was very shady. You can't even read this stuff, not even with a magnifying glass. It's gray. How close from my backyard and my neighbor's backyard is going to be these apartments? How tall are they going to be? What's the noise level going to be like? What kind of housing is it going to be? The safety. I mean, Those are valid things. And there was nothing in this letter. When's it going to start? How does it affect my house, my neighbors? You know, we take pride in our neighborhood. I know everyone that lives in a home takes pride in your neighborhood too. But it's just, for me and my wife and my 4 kids, you know, we were planning on being there for a long time. You know, and I get, I think we had envisioned maybe someday it'd be an acreage, bigger homes. But to have 200 plus apartments up to the creek, big giant pool and clubhouse, I mean, there's going to be some significant safety concerns, noise concerns. What about all our trees that we've planted? What if they touch part of the boundaries? How does that look? So I do echo what my neighbors say, and I truly hope that we can understand this and that there can be some consideration of our concerns. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Come on down, please.
Yes, thank you. I sent a letter yesterday that I think you probably already had. Yes, and so I wasn't planning to be here, but
Your
I was
name and address,
downtown.
please.
I'm sorry?
Name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jim, excuse me, Jim Farrell, Farrell, 1903 South HWS Cleveland Boulevard. And the one thing that hadn't been brought up is we have Elkhorn South High School right there. And the traffic is extremely heavy for Elkhorn South High School at certain times of the day, all during the day. And the way that this subdivision development appears, and we haven't talked, so I'm just looking at it from my perspective. People are going to come out of it, and they're going to go over to Cleveland, and they're going to go down Cleveland to get out. We're already a shortcut for everybody that goes to Elkhorn South or the other commercial businesses that are there. And we have commercial businesses in both ends of this already. And I do have concerns about putting more commercial business in that area and changing the entire makeup of that. I couldn't read it very well either. It looked like there was going to be commercial development in there as well. So those are my concerns. So again, it's more of a traffic and safety concern. We already have significant traffic on Cleveland. This is just going to push more. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Anyone else want to come speak? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Larry, would you want to come up and address these issues?
Yes. Yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Larry Jobin, 11440 Western Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant and the developer. I'll address the access issues first. So these are the various access points that are called for with this particular development. This is an existing stub-in street here into this area that will be multifamily. I have a site plan that I'll share with you in a minute. And then this is Miranda Street that is also stubbed in to this property to the west, and that connection will be made. Then there are 2 really fixed points of access to this particular property. One is off 200th Street to West Center Road, which eventually will be a signalized intersection when it's warranted. And then here at this location at 204th Street, which will also be a signalized intersection. And that's, both West Center Road and 204th Street are state highways, obviously can accept and handle a tremendous amount of traffic, essentially unlimited, really. And then we have been working with Elkhorn South, and Elkhorn South has expressed an interest in allowing access for their students to come through this area at this location here. So we've agreed to work with Elkhorn Public Schools regarding that access point. And then we are willing to work with the landowner to the south here as far as the actual configuration. Obviously, there's some fixed physical constraints, time constraints, money constraints, but this is essentially the roundabout that is currently in and installed, so it has to meet that particular location here. So these are the access points. There's many ways in and many ways out. There's also an access point here to the property to the south when it develops. So, that point may be adjusted here or there depending on what happens here to the south. But other than that, these connection points have been called for. Obviously, we've talked about connectivity with the master plan for years and years, and obviously it's not only encouraged, it's really required from a master plan perspective. I did want to point out that this area right here is phase 2, so that will be zoned down the road with a PUD, so that's really not even on the table at this point. This is just the preliminary plat and the mixed use development agreement as far as moving forward. This is obviously the phase 1, phase 2, which will be rezoned down the road with the PUD. Interestingly, this is the site plan, phase 2 location. All this is phase 1 here. So this being allowed to be R6 and recommended for approval for the R6, we could have up to 292 units on this 13.4 acres. They're only calling for 216 units. Again, down the road with a new rezoning, a new PUD, not really talking about that necessarily today. So with that, I think I addressed everything. If you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them.
You might address the screening.
Oh, well, it's we will meet all the buffer requirements, and again, it's a PUD, so, you know, we always say what you see is what you get with the PUD. So when we come in with that PUD plan, that will show the buffering, that'll show the distance, but obviously we'll have to meet those site regulators between the existing residential development to the east and the R6 zoning to the west that was being called for with the phase 2.
Larry, did you have I assume you didn't have a neighborhood meeting?
No, we had a couple neighbors, I think, that called and said that they weren't really interested in coming down. They just wanted to know what we were doing. But again, since this really isn't part of the phase 1, you know, there'll be plenty of time for neighborhood meetings to discuss phase 2 and what's actually going to be developed on the phase 2 property. So
What's your timeline?
timeline on phase 1 is immediate as far as grading and putting in the infrastructure. Phase 2, I think that really depends on how the phase 1 multifamily apartments go. So I'm not really sure we have an exact time frame, but at that point in time, we'll clearly have a neighborhood meeting to talk with the people to the east and show them exactly, you know, what we're proposing. But at this time, it's premature really to meet with anybody because we're not 100% sure what phase 2 will look like.
So in phase 1, your only access points then will be off of 204th Street and then to the north by Elkhorn South High School, right?
It'll be
In phase 1.
It'll be Miranda, 204th, here, 204th, and then West Center Road through this 200th Street here, and then obviously through here, and then you have Elkhorn South. So yes, but this connection point won't be made.
Phase 1, actually, we're not making a connection, so
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes. You know what, that was in the rec report, sorry about that. Yeah, there's a turnaround right here. We're not gonna make that connection until phase 2 comes in, sorry about that.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Public hearing's closed, so would like to hear from the city.
Excuse me, can I add something?
Come on up. I'll ask you. Come on.
You need to give your name and address again, please.
Just real quick. Just Nancy Bopes, 1918 South 199th Street. The one thing that I wanted to add is, if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be right here a bunch of other apartments that are already designated and getting going right here. So it's going to be designated and like retail or commercial, whatever you want to say, that's going to be in this area. So again, everyone's going to have to, go in through neighborhoods to get into that. And I understand it's phase 2, but I also feel like being apartments, that's a whole lot of people that you're entering through apartments, you're entering through 2 other neighborhoods. It's just going to add to the congestion. So hopefully with phase 2, they can reconsider something, or we can talk about this. We just got our letter a week and a half ago. So we haven't had any time to even I don't know, do something about it. So I appreciate the time today.
Thank you. Okay, let's hear from the city.
Yeah, if I could have Ryan Haas from Public Works come up, just have a few questions or comments.
Ryan Haas with the Public Works Department.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Just, you heard the commentary and the concerns and questions about traffic. I guess, you know, being a traffic engineer, if you could just elaborate a little bit on just your perspective and.
Sure, yeah.
Yep.
So overall, the development will be required to provide a traffic study that'll be reviewed and approved by the city. So that will show what kind of improvements we would need out here at the main intersection at 204th Street. With regards to the connections, that's a standard thing that happens. That's how development happens over time, that the original plat comes in and we require stub streets to be connected to in the future. Now, if the applicant had been proposing single family in this area, this public street connection here would have been extended down through the development. As I understand it, the master plan does support multifamily here instead, so it's being platted as a single lot. With that in mind, we do need to then dispose of the stub, and that's where the rec report recommends vacating that and conveying it to allow that as a private driveway connection instead of a public street through the multifamily site. I think something that's important to keep in mind when we talk about these connections and the transportation demand, again, the master plan supports a residential component here, so development, if that's what ends up occurring, yeah, if there's driveways down here and this connection here isn't made, maybe there isn't trips in and out of that specific stub, but if the transportation demand exists from the multifamily site going north or east, that's just going to result in a longer trip that goes down south and around and back up. So we haven't really accomplished anything in that scenario by not having that connection be made as far as routing of trips. All we've done is made longer trips past more people's house. So again, yes, it will be a change, but the master plan does support this development type. And so one other thing to keep in mind when we're talking about connections, this is kind of, if you look at the square mile here as it currently exists, there are a lack of the full street network to allow connections out to the highway, 204th and West Center Road. That has become kind of maybe ingrained as far as the travel patterns internal to the neighborhood that were mentioned as far as how you have to get in and out of the neighborhood. That's only going to improve as development happens. The Shadowview Village neighborhood or development is very close to the finish line. That will entail the construction of HWS Cleveland south of Marinda Street. So that'll be another connection available to the neighborhood. This one here will enable trips to go directly south and west, where right now they have to backtrack out. So these developments will help as they occur, will help kind of spread those existing trips that are kind of constrained because of the way development has paused over time. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And one more thing, Eric, there was a mention of concerns about speed along 199th Street. This particular development is still in an SID, so I would encourage anyone, if they want to pursue potential traffic calming, they could have their SID engineer reach out to the Douglas County Engineer's Office with that request.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Well, you're green. I don't know. Can you hear him?
Sorry, new audio system here. I'm not sure how to get my speaking power back. You know, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I am very familiar with this area. I do have a child that goes to Elkhorn South, so I'm very familiar with both the neighborhood where the opposition has spoke as well as traffic to and from the school. Obviously, traffic around schools are always challenging on certain parts of the day. We acknowledge that, we recognize that. I do believe that the future connections, especially with Phase 2 and the connection through the Shadow View Village, which is that new street that has just been put in that would have access to West Center, I think that would help alleviate some of the concerns with the existing neighborhood. Right now, you have limited options. I know if you're coming from the southeast and going to the high school, you're either taking West Center Road to 204th, then up to Blue Sage, or you are cutting through the single-family neighborhood. With the connection in this future second phase, if you're traveling from from West Center, you can take 200th Street, bypass the single-family residential neighborhood, and then connect it directly into the high school. So I do think once build-out happens and those connections are made, that is very important. The proposed plan is master plan compliant. The intersection of 204th and West Center Road is the largest mixed-use center that we have available in the city, which allows up to 165 acres of office and commercial development. There are currently 94 acres available. This proposal would take a shade over 30 new acres, which would leave a total of 64 acres of available office and commercial zoning for the adjacent property on the south or any other undeveloped properties at the intersection. Along with the mixed-use triangle, you do have a certain number of multifamily units that are available and supported to be built adjacent to those mixed-use centers. And so that's why you have the proposed R6 zoning, the multifamily. The master plan does support that use.
Eric, I have a quick question.
Yes.
The multifamily. Does this fall under I could be wrong on this, but isn't there an overlay that runs along 204th Street that essentially allows for unlimited multifamily to be developed along that highway?
That's correct.
Okay.
Not only 204th Street, but also West Center Road, because those are both state
you have
highways.
two highways that are crossing that basically allow for unlimited.
You could have unlimited amount of multifamily units. They still need to meet zoning setbacks and regulators, buffer yards, requirements such as that, but there's not a hard cap on the number of units that is typically shown with mixed-use triangles or mixed-use areas. So the area closest to the neighborhood, that is outside the quarter mile, so that is part of the overall count that there is a cap at the intersection, but the units that are shown to the west of the drainage way do not count towards that cap. So the city did send notification letter. Anytime there's a proposed zoning change, we send that out. We try to send a site plan for information. There's contact information on the letter to support the planner that is working on that. We can always send you PDFs that are more clear. So, sorry if it's hard to read. It's a challenge from the city's perspective. But we're always here to help and can send you more detailed electronic plans, or you can always stop in to view larger plans. There is I know it's a second phase, and down the road, there is a 30-foot landscape buffer yard requirement from R6 to the adjacent single-family neighborhood. So that would typically include grass, landscaping, shrubs, and trees. There cannot be any structures within that. I don't think I have anything else to add from the city's perspective, so unless the board has questions, I can make the recommendation. This is a preliminary plat, so after planning board, if the board recommends approval, it would proceed to city council, which is another public hearing. After that, whatever the timing is of the developer, they could bring in the phase 1 final plat, which would also go back to planning board and then city council as well. Thank you for my own microphone here.
Thank you.
There is one outlot that has a lot frontage waiver. This is custom and common when you have mixed-use development. So staff recommends approval of a waiver to section 5384D lot frontage, approval of the rezoning from AG to R6 and MU, subject to submit of an acceptable mixed-use development agreement with the final plat, and approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 26 conditions in the recommendation report.
Thank you, Eric. Any other comments or questions of the board before we take a vote? Anyone ready to make the motion?
I move approval of the waiver to section 5384D lot frontage and approval of the rezoning from AG to R6 and MU, subject to submittal of an acceptable mixed-use development agreement with the final plat, and approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the 26 conditions outlined in the recommendation report.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, would you please take the vote?
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondle? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Okay, now we'll take on item number 13, which was pulled off. I'm sorry? And 24. We'll take the two of them together. We'll probably take separate motions on them, but we'll discuss them together. Okay, may we hear from the, oh, I need to read it again, I'm sorry. Number 13, C10-24-258, C12-24-259, Shabbat Lubavitch of Nebraska, Inc. is the applicant on consent for approval. Request is preliminary and final plat approval of Bel Air Village Replat 3, excuse me, a minor plat inside city limits with rezoning from R2 and R3 to R3, along with expansion of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District, location southwest of 120th and Shirley Street, and number 24, which is KC 7-24-260, same applicant, Shabbat Lubavitch of Nebraska, Inc., on consent, or was on for approval. Request is approval of conditional use permit to allow religious assembly in the R3 district, location southwest of 120th and Shirley Streets. May we hear from the applicant?
Hi, Jim Shelton, Page Sutherland Page Architects, 321 Evans Avenue, San Antonio, Texas, 78209. Rabbi Katzman is here to represent as well. We are fine with the approval, the recommendation for approval. There is one condition in that approval for the consent was the amount of curb cuts we have on the site. As you can see, there's three curb cuts, that the one on Shirley and the one on 121st are existing. The one on 120th is about here now, and we're actually moving it south to align with the adjacent street. The condition of approval was to remove the access on Shirley. We're fine with, the only concern we have is the fire department comes back with fire access. We may need that, because that lot is so narrow, we may need the dual access of those curb cuts to allow fire access. So we're just asking it to basically approve the use, the replat and the zoning, but basically allow us the flexibility to work with the planning department on, and the fire department on what's the best access to that site. We're perfectly fine with making that a one-way loop. So maybe you come in off 121st and go out off of Shirley. That would be a right turn only off of Shirley or onto Shirley to help ease some of those traffic issues. Most of the lot for the use for the larger events, Saturday service is the southern lot. The northern lot really is just for staff and that kind of weekly use. So not a lot of traffic in that northern lot. So that's our only request, is that maybe we don't have the condition to close Shirley today, but we just work with the planning department of the best solution moving forward.
Okay,
Thank you.
Jim.
Jim, when does that conversation with the fire happen, where you would know if they'd want you to have that or not?
Probably we're in design development now, so we'll be going to permit probably late January. So
Okay.
so in that point, and if fire's okay, we're okay closing that lot, because there's only 10 or 12 cars that use that lot anyway.
Okay, so you'll know pretty quick.
We'll know pretty quick. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the proponent side want to speak? Okay, on the opponent side, anyone wish to speak? Seeing none, Eric?
Yeah, so since in the short duration of after the pre-meeting and before the regular meeting here started, staff did have discussions on this issue. So planning and public works, we are acceptable to making that modification. So I'll just kind of read it here, but then I'll state it again in the actual recommendation. But for number 24, there's condition number 3 that currently says submittal of, in compliance with a revised site plan, removing the site Shirley Street access prior to submitting for a building permit application. We are comfortable changing that condition to read as coordinate with city staff on an acceptable access plan prior to submitting for building permit. So, you know, and if fire says that needs to remain, then we will continue to coordinate on what that looks like, if it's a one-way or remains the full access. And if fire is comfortable with removing it, then we'll do so accordingly. So there are two items on the agenda, specifically for number 13, which is the zoning and the plating component. There is not a condition that needs to be modified on this one. So staff recommends approval of the MCC overlay district, approval of the rezoning from R2 and R3 to R3, approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 6 conditions in the report, and approval of the final plat subject to submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement if necessary prior to forwarding to City Council.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board? If not, do we have a motion?
A motion to approve the MCC overlay district, approve the rezoning from R2 and R3 to R3, approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 6 conditions in the recommendation report, and approval of the final plat subject to the conditions of preliminary plat approval and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding the request to City Council.
Second. Kathy, please take a vote.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Condell?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Okay, we have a motion on case number 24.
For agenda item number 24, staff recommends approval of a conditional use permit to allow religious assembly in the R3 district, subject to the 6 conditions in the recommendation report, with the modification to number 3 to read as coordinate with city staff on acceptable access plan prior to submitting for building permit. A board member can make a recommendation subject to as stated by the planning department, rather than reading that out verbatim if you wish.
Okay, like to have a motion?
I move approval of the conditional use permit to allow religious assembly in the R3 district, subject to the 6 conditions outlined in the report, but modify condition number 3 as stated by the planning department in testimony.
And a second? Second. Kathy, please take the vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondell?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Okay, that concludes the consent cases. We will now move back to the administrative meeting only cases. There will be 3 cases in that where no public testimony is taken. First case is number 1, case C10-24-240 and C12-24-241. Applicant, the Mesh Group, request is a final plat approval of Rose at Barcalos, a subdivision inside city limits with approval of a rezoning from R435 to R5. The location is 4209 and 4215 Ellison Avenue. May we hear from Eric?
Yes, so this is the final plat, which is the exact same layout as the approved preliminary plat, which is actually pending City Council here on November 19th. However, this could have been processed as a minor plat, so it's okay that this is on the planning board before that is actually approved at City Council. But it includes 14 residential lots and 1 outlot. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from R435 to R5, and approval of the final plat subject to submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to City Council.
Any comments from the board? Do we have a motion?
On case 1, motion to approve the rezoning from R435 to R5 and approval of the final plat subject to submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding the request to the City Council for final action.
Second.
Kathy, may we take a vote?
Pate?
Yes.
Tondell?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Okay, next is item number 1, case C10-22-239, C12-22-240, applicant HRC Coventry Woods LLC. Request is a final plat approval of the Rye at Harrison, formerly Coventry Wood, lots 1 through 2, outlot A, a subdivision outside the city limit with rezoning from AG to DR and R6, location northeast of 216th and Harrison Street. May we hear from Eric?
So this is phase 2 of the development, formerly Coventry Wood, but this phase is the Riot Harrison. It includes 2 lots. The previous approved preliminary plat was 1 lot, but the boundaries are the same. You just have an additional lot for this R6 zone property. There is 1 outlot. There's 1 comment that needs to be addressed regarding the right-of-way dedication that's shown on the final plat. So staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R6, approval of the final plat subject to the 2 conditions in the recommendation report prior to forwarding to City Council.
Thank you, Eric. Any comments from the board? Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R6 and approval of the final plat subject to the 2 conditions outlined in the report prior to forwarding the request on to City Council for final action.
Second.
With a comment and a second, we need a vote. Kathy, please record the vote.
Tondal?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
All right, item number 3. Okay, C10, 1878, C12, 1879. Applicant Scrupa Investment Company request final plat approval of Pravada, lots 178 through 184, and outlots Q through S. A subdivision outside city limits, excuse me, with rezoning from AG to MU. The location is southwest of 204th Street and West Center Road. May we hear from the city?
Yeah, so this second phase would final plat 7 mixed-use lots and 3 outlots. It's consistent with the approved preliminary plat back in 2019. It accounts for 40 tree mitigation plantings that will have to be confirmed with city staff that weren't originally done. So we'll coordinate with the applicant prior to going to City Council. Other than that, there's a few mixed-use comments that'll be adequately addressed before proceeding. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to MU, subject to submittal of acceptable mixed-use development agreement prior to City Council, and approval of the final plat, subject to addressing the 2 conditions prior to City Council.
Thank you, Eric. Any comments from the board? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the rezoning from AG to MU, subject to submittal of an acceptable mixed-use district development agreement prior to forwarding a request to City Council, and approval of the final plat subject to the 2 conditions in the recommendation report.
Second.
Thank you. Kathy, could you record the vote, please?
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondal?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
All right, item number 5 is a rezoning. It's case C10-04-306, applicants K9 Resorts. Request is approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use district development agreement for Maple Valley. This case was laid over from July 3rd meeting. Location is 16510 Bedford Avenue. May we hear from the applicant?
Board members, John Blumenthal, 1601 Dodge Street, on behalf of applicant K9 Resorts. K9 Resorts is a dog resort, and when I say dog resort, I'll show you some slides here, but to say dog boarding is an understatement. They run 170 locations throughout the country. This would be their first location in Nebraska. That's my baby. It's Gwen Stefani, for those of you who may know. So that's my dog, and I always say good government and good planning starts with reflecting the will of the citizens, and we're dog people in this town. And you know, there's nothing I wouldn't do for my dog. I hate leaving her, and I need the best if I'm going to board her. So to that effect, the city has recently amended mixed-use developments in Omaha, very close to this location, to permit dog kenneling, including Dogtopia at 156th and Maple. With due respect to Dogtopia, if that is the Motel 6 of dog boarding, this is the Ritz-Carlton of dog boarding. To that end, K9 Resorts, at their last annual meeting, had the CEO from the Ritz-Carlton come to speak to their staff and their board members, because that's the level of service that they strive to provide. Canine Resorts is consistently ranked the #1 dog boarding facility in the United States. So this is a top-notch facility. I want to share some slides with you, if we can get these. There we go. Well, I'm never going to figure that part out. Yeah. There we go. I knew there was a trick, but. So we are talking low-stress boarding with these dogs, and everything that they do is above industry standard. So, show you some rooms of what this looks like. The luxury suite is, I would stay in a luxury suite. I really would, and if that's a condition, I'll do it for a night. Show you some of the outdoor boarding, and we'll get to some specifics. But if you note the synthetic grass that's used and the fencing is a specific synthetic and noise reduction synthetic grass and fencing. Their HVAC system is truly above and beyond what any other really business in town would use. They strive for no odor whatsoever. And every surface in a canine resort is a non-porous surface, meaning that it doesn't retain smell, it's easy to clean, all epoxy flooring. And again, top-notch industry standards. So their level of detail and service is unmatched. And again, the outdoor areas have excellent soundproofing. Dogs aren't left outside for long periods of time. They aren't left outside at night. What we're really trying to do is bring a first-rate business to 156th and Bedford and to amend a mixed-use development in a similar manner that's been done recently again for other dog kennels in Omaha. And I'll use the word kenneling because that's the specific planning term. But again, this is a dog resort, and they're proud of that. There is a demand for these services. If you've got a dog in town and you want to take it to the best place in town, this is going to be the opportunity to do that. And we believe it's worthy of the planning board's support. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thanks.
Okay, any other proponents wishing to speak? If not, any opponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Can we hear from Eric?
Yeah, so obviously, we did have this request on the planning board agenda back in July. We didn't have any testimony because there was a request for a layover at the time. You know, I understand the kennel use type. Not all of the facilities that fit under that use type are the typical kennel use that you think of, but specifically, as you're aware, I don't have the definition here in front of me, but I think, you know, we've had enough conversation on this topic that any external or outdoor effect with you know, some type of facility, whether it's a retail or whether it's boarding, that has an outdoor component is classified as kennel. And so we had multiple cases earlier this year that went to the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding this use. And then we had this site, which was laid over back in July. And then we also had the other site that was mentioned by the applicant nearby at 156 in West Maple. So staff did not support that. The planning board did not support that. City council ended up approving that, which the planning department does not agree with. We are not supportive of having an outdoor component in office and commercial districts. As a result of the conversation around this topic, the city and the planning department did take a fresh look at our zoning codes. And actually, one of the next few cases actually would, if approved, would amend the zoning code to allow in the LI, GI, and HI, so the 3 industrial districts that we have in our zoning code, to allow a kennel use with a conditional use permit. So that would open up thousands of sites throughout the city of where a kennel could operate if approved by the planning board and ultimately city council. Currently, there are only 4 districts in which a kennel can operate. It is permitted in AG, and then with a conditional use permit in DR, GC, and CH, which is commercial highway, which there is not much of. So we are comfortable based on the other use types that are allowed in industrial districts that have outdoor components, noise, sometimes smell. We are comfortable with the amendment that would open it up in those districts. However, we are not going to be comfortable at all with mixed use or office and commercial zoning when you have an external outdoor effect, just because of the potential impacts to adjacent properties. Part of the concern is, you know, if approved, let's say this site is approved with the mixed use zoning, I mean, code enforcement, it's impossible for us to be able to respond to barking dogs. It's an extreme challenge. So that is one of the biggest concerns, and we feel that the other uses that are allowed in this zoning district and other office commercial zoning districts, it's just not a compatible use. So therefore, staff recommends a denial.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? If not, do we have a motion?
Move for denial.
Kathy, please record the vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel? Sotolongo? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Denial approved, 6-0.
All right, number 6. You can confirm with them afterwards. You can confer with the city afterwards. So. Okay, number 6, KC 3-24-251. Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha requests approval of the Oxworth Apartments TIF redevelopment project plan, location southeast of 27th and Leavenworth Streets. Maybe we hear from the city.
Yeah, good afternoon, Don Seaton, City Planning. This is a residential infill redevelopment project, tax increment financing project on the south side of Leavenworth, located between 26th and 27th Streets. As you can see, it encompasses nearly an entire city block. It leaves out just one small parcel to the southeast of that, on that block. The site is primarily vacant, although there is one building on the site. It's an existing brick historic building. The proposal on the site is for a large new apartment building with 194 market rate units. It'll be a building of 4 and 5 stories in height with about 114 parking stalls inside the building, additional parking in the adjacent rights of way. And that existing brick historic building will be rehabbed and incorporated into this large 194 unit apartment complex. The developer is Clarity Development, managed by Tom McClay, doing business as Alamito Leavenworth LLC. The Alamito name comes from the history of the site. It was formerly, or at one time, the site of the Alamito Dairy business. This project represents a total investment in the neighborhood of $43 million. The TIF support for the project is $6,511,697. I would note that this project is in an extremely blighted area, an EBA, so you'll get a 20-year TIF term when we do the TIF agreement. It's also in the urban core housing and mobility plan area, specifically the influence area. So there will be a contribution of the TIF revenues to the streetcar construction, which includes the entirety of the last 5 years of that 20-year term that I had mentioned. The project meets the required criteria for the TIF program. It's been approved by the TIF committee. It's an appropriate land use for the location. It's a rendering. Complies with the city's master plan, and we ask for your approval.
Thanks, Don. Any other proponents wish to speak?
Tom McClay, 5200 Webster Street, of Clarity Development Company is my company. I'm here with Brett West from Assurity Life Insurance, who is co-developing the project. I would like to start by apologizing. I did not bring a picture of my dog, which I didn't know was required today. But so if that'll, I can do next time. We have been in front of you all before on the replat with this project. Now we are coming back. Don did an excellent job of giving a summary of where we were, and I think we did before. You see the rendering there. We have, you might note, the Alameda Leavenworth is the LLC. Oxworth Apartment actually is the name that we will be branding the apartments under, which is the ox being a reference to the bovine nature of the dairy, and then Worth coming from Leavenworth Street, which we thought kind of carried a nice name for the project. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have and ask for your support. Thanks.
Out on the, what's the building on the southeast corner?
On the southeast corner.
I assume you don't own that part.
Yeah, it's a small 4-unit kind of up-down townhome, about a 100-year-old building that's there and currently rented.
Okay.
There's presently a little house that's there that we did purchase that we will be taking down to make part of this project. That's still there.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
All right. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Any opponents? Seeing none, hear from the city.
Yeah, so obviously, as Tom had mentioned, there was previously a plat and PUR that went through planning board and also has gone through city council. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? If not, do we have a motion? Motion approved. Kathy, please record the vote.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel? Yes. Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, number 7. Okay, C3-24-263. Applicant again is the Planning Department. On behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of the 3552 apartments TIF redevelopment project plan, location 3552 Leavenworth Street. May we hear from Don again?
Yes, good afternoon again. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. This project is not too far from the one we just looked at and is also on Leavenworth. This is also a residential infill redevelopment project. This one's located on the north side of Leavenworth and is between 35th Avenue and 36th Street. The site presently contains 2 buildings. One is an old Family Dollar store, and the smaller building is a small restaurant, or was a small restaurant known as the Taste of India restaurant. Both of those buildings are now empty. The project for this tax increment financing application is a new 5-story apartment building. We'll have 85 market rate apartment units. The developer is 3552 Owner LLC, and it's managed by Ryan Spellman. This project is not in an EBA, so it's a 15-year TIF term, although it is within the urban core housing and mobility plan area. So it too will be making a contribution to the construction of the streetcar system. The total project investment in the neighborhood is around $25 million. The TIF support for the project is $2,900,541. And again, this project meets the required criteria of the TIF program, has been approved by the TIF committee. It's an appropriate land use for the location and complies with the city's master plan goals. We ask for your approval.
Thank you, Don. Any other, proponents that wish to speak?
Good afternoon, Ryan Spellman, 9951 Harney Parkway North. Don, thank you for the introduction. And again, I think this came before you guys in August for the TOD rezoning, so you are familiar with it, I believe, and I am here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents that wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll hear from the city.
Yeah, so as mentioned, the board previously looked at the rezoning, which will be pending city council here soon. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Kathy, please record the vote.
Pate,
Yes.
Tondal,
Yes.
Sotolongo, Moore,
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, number 8, KC 3-24-242. Again, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request is approval of an amendment to Chapter 55 zoning to allow kennels in industrial districts, allow an accessory dwelling unit, ADU, in the AG district, and modify the resource extract and use type description. This case was laid over from the October meeting.
Yeah, so this zoning code amendment was, had to be laid over last month. Unfortunately, we realized there was a notification error. With zoning code amendments, we are required by state law to notify every registered neighborhood association with the City of Omaha. And due to a technical glitch, there was a handful of associations that were not notified. So therefore, we laid over the request and it is back on before the board. That previous submittal, I did not mention this in the pre-meeting, but that did include adoption of new flood maps. We did not include that here. That will come as a standalone item in the next few months, which will need to be adopted by March from FEMA. So, but this is related to opening up the kennel use type, which we discussed shortly ago with another case. That amendment would allow the kennel use type in the LI, GI, and HI zoning districts with approval of a conditional use permit. Additionally, it would allow an accessory dwelling unit in the ag zoning district with approval of a conditional use permit. That is the one residential district that was previously excluded when we made changes to that housing type code earlier this year. And then there is a small modification for the resource extraction use type definition. Just some clarification, cleanup of wording. This is a rare use type in the City of Omaha, but there was an inquiry that led us to make a small clarification. So staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Eric. Any other comments or questions from the board? What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Any other proponents? Seeing none. Any opponents? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, I guess. All right.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Kathy, please record the vote.
Tondal,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 6-0.
Okay. All right, number 9. KC 3-24-135. Again, Planning Department on behalf of the city. Request approval and amendment to Chapter 55 zoning regarding landscaping regulations and urban design code. Location, the City of Omaha and the 3-mile extraterritorial district jurisdiction. May we hear from the city?
Yeah, so this zoning code amendment was actually previously recommended for approval by the planning board back on August 7th. However, with our recent case just discussed with the notification error, it was realized that this also, there were a handful of associations that were not sent. So we are bringing it back to the planning board so that we're compliant with that state regulation. This deals with some modification of urban design code as well as landscaping provisions. There was a previous inclusion of Chapter 24 amendment, which related to the Urban Design Review Board. However, that it was decided that could proceed directly to City Council. It never had to come to the Planning Board for a recommendation because it's not part of the zoning code. So that is not included. It was more of a courtesy as it aligned with the proposed Chapter 55 Urban Design Code. So that Chapter 24 amendment actually had the public hearing before City Council at yesterday's meeting and is up for vote on November 19th. So related to these amendment for the landscaping and urban design code, staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Eric. Any other comments, or do we have a motion from? Why do I keep forgetting?
Because I'm saying the recommendation.
Oh, that's right, you are. Okay, again, any proponents that wish to speak? Seeing none, any opponents wishing to speak? With that, I'll close the public hearing. We already have the recommendation. Now we can take a vote. Okay, thank you. Kathy, please record the vote.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore? Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondal? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Okay, I'll try to remember on 10.
I'm not speaking on this one. It's Matt.
Okay, number 10, are you going to be able to stay,
Yes.
Matt? Okay, all right, sounds good. Number 10, case C3-24-266, applicant planning department on behalf of the city, request approval of the City of Omaha Climate Action and Resilience Plan, location City of Omaha in the 3-mile territorial jurisdiction. May we hear from the city?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Planning Board members. I'm Marco Floriani with the Mayor's Office, Deputy Chief of Staff, Economic Development. About 2 years ago, the city decided to develop its first climate action resiliency plan. Stems from the Mayor's Office and has been led by the Planning Department, Robert LaRocco in Planning. Here today to introduce that plan and hopefully receive a recommendation to take to City Council at the end of the month. I have a few slides here. Happy to go through some of these and answer any questions you may have. To give you just a quick overview of who was involved with the creation of this plan, it was the City of Omaha. Pale Blue Dot was our consultant, specifically on the climate action resiliency side, and the HDR was a sub-consultant on community engagement. This work is parallel to a regional climate action plan that's underway, and MAPPA has participated and is leading that regional element to this work. I included this slide that I did not include at our brief pre-planning board meeting, just showing the surface temperatures. So this was a slide that we included in many public meetings and seemed to get a response from those that attended these meetings, but just showing the overall increase in global surface temperature from the industrial evolution kind of up into today. And then also just wanted to point out again that the 23 of the 25 hottest days on record have been since the year 2000. You know, if you think about greenhouse gases, adding a blanket and trapping and not allowing heat to escape. Continuing to add blankets, the more we release greenhouse gases. And really this plan looks to curb that, as well as to set us up to be resilient. And think about what is our first line of defense? Is it disaster emergency response, or is it mitigation and adaptation? So again, climate action, purposeful activity to address climate change and reduce our contributions to it. Resilience, the capacity to withstand, respond to, and recover from climate impacts. This Climate Action Resiliency Plan, often known as the CARP, addresses both of these. The goals of this plan are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to reduce those 52% by 2035, as well as a reduction of 100% by 2050. I like to give context on these matters. To give you an example, many other communities have similar goals: Kansas City, Des Moines, Denver, Minneapolis. I also like to point to the private sector. If you think this is going too far, you're also telling Tyson Foods that they're going too far. They have the exact same goals as we do. Ford Motor Company, General Motors, Coca-Cola are just some, to name a few, that have similar goals as these. Impacts addressed in this plan and ones that we're preparing for: waste management, looking at how we can dispose of organics and composting to release less methane gases, flooding and water resources, and that everything goes downstream. How can we better think about stormwater treatment and floodplains together? Air quality, thinking of the air quality that we experience maybe from wildfires that could be in Canada, but even that could be contributed locally through increasing temperatures, pollen, dust, different particulates. And then vehicle miles traveled, transportation. Vehicle miles traveled is second to electrical production or energy production in contributions to greenhouse gases. And then also buildings and energy and land use, or buildings and energy use, solar, wind, and weatherizations. an overview of Omaha's greenhouse gas emissions. We did an analysis that really looked at all city assets and where our GHG emissions are coming from. It's primarily electrical production or energy production, as well as mobile combustion, which is really that vehicle miles, and stationary combustion, which is homes, buildings, solid waste, wastewater. An overview on the process. It was about a 16 to 18 month process. I think when it goes to city council, it will have been 18 months. We had 100 planning team members, I think over 100, 50 plus community partner groups that were engaged. And I think it was closer to 3,000 community members that filled out our surveys, both online or in person. We had a number of research groups, including UNMC and Creighton, that helped kind of, I guess, fact check and make sure that this was science-based work, as well as many staff here at the city. And again, I mentioned those online surveys there as well. You know, thinking about the results of that survey, 69% said they were either very or moderately concerned about climate change and public health and welfare. 71% were either very or moderately concerned that roads, bridges, infrastructure, sewer, power would be impacted, as well as 70% thought were either very or moderately concerned about the impacts of climate change on local ecosystems. There's national surveys that are every 2 years that ask these same questions, and we found that our results closely mirrored those. And those also suggested that over 68% support policies and action by elected officials and government to prepare for addressing these issues. When you look at the plan, it addresses these 8 sectors of wastewater, public health, food, green space, tree canopy, climate economy, buildings and energy, transportation and land use, and solid waste and recycling. With that, we have about 47 strategies to help us achieve these goals that these working groups, the public, co-authored with the city. I think there was close to 200 actions at one point, but we had to edit and make sure that this was looking at things that the city has authority to really kind of lead with. A lot also do require partnerships, say with OPPD or MUD. And we don't really like to have an end date for this work. I'd say this work, it was designed to think about a 10-year implementation timeframe, but we really call this a roadmap for a journey. There's really no target date we're trying to hit except for trying to curb those greenhouse gas emissions. But we're going to take an adaptive management approach to this and prioritize over what makes sense at that time from a cost perspective and for what we can achieve with the resources available to kind of guide this work. I wanted to include some key elements to this plan. Again, there's 169 recommended actions, but up here, and I don't know if all of them, looks like the 8th was cut off. But you know, transportation and land use, we're seeing more dense development as evidence of some of the projects that have gone before you today. But just continuing to see how this plan can encourage that, maybe by helping lower vehicle miles travel, making sure that that density is then reported and be part of this climate action plan. That includes increasing public transit use, expanding bike and pedestrian infrastructure. We have over 24 plans regionally that address climate action already. This plan brought all those together and looked at it from a city purview. An example would be Vision Zero. Looks at has many recommendations of roundabouts. Roundabouts reduce idle time, which then reduces fuel and issues of idling at intersections. Same with planting trees to slow down traffic and carbon sequestration. Some of the other goals are listed here. And I don't know if you want me to go through all of these, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Robert here is as well to help answer any you might have.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other proponents wish to speak? If not, let's see, any opponents that wish to speak? Seeing none. Eric, we're from the city.
much else to add. Obviously, there's been a lot of hard work, both from Marco and Robert and Derek and others on the team, both within the city, but also our key partners out there that have. There's been a lot of meetings and a lot of contributions. So staff recommends approval.
Motion from the board. Kathy, please record the vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondal?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I approve 6-0.
thank you. Oh,
Thank you.
okay, next case, or next item, number 21. Case C7-00-250, C7-24-249. Applicants Concordia Lutheran Schools of Omaha, Inc., and King of Kings Church. Request approval of a major amendment to a conditional use permit to allow secondary education facilities in the R4 district, along with approval of a conditional use permit to allow religious assembly in the R4 district. The property is located within an MCC, Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District, and the location is 15656 Fort Street. May we hear from the applicant?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Michael Sands, 1700 Farnham Street, on behalf of the applicant. With me is Angela Bell of King of Kings Church. Just wanted to state that we are in agreement with the staff report, inclusive of the conditions provided therein, and happy to answer any questions or provide any detail you would like of us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Anyone else wish to speak in proponents? Okay, seeing none, any in opposition? Opponents, please. Seeing none, Eric, from the city?
Yeah, so we proposed a reduction in the electronic messaging. That's why the reason that it's not on consent agenda. But overall, staff is acceptable. So this is a two-part component. We have the major amendment for the existing Concordia Lutheran Church school, I should say, sorry. And then also the new conditional use permit related to King of Kings Religious Assembly. So parking is sufficient, for the two different uses it's being accounted for. There's an increase in the overall budget for signage related to the site, which we are acceptable to. And then with the modifications to the proposed electronic monument side and shortening that to 6 feet and then 40 square feet in size, subject to turning it off at night, as well as compliance with the performance standards of section 55-854. There are a few zoning board of appeals that are being supported that will need to be applied for and approved by the zoning board of appeals as well. So there's a two-part recommendation here. Staff recommends approval of the major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow secondary education facilities in the R4 district subject to the 6 conditions, and approval of the conditional use permit to allow religious assembly in the R4 district subject to the 7 conditions.
Thank you, Eric. Any discussion from the board? If not, can we have a motion?
Case 21. Motion for the approval of a major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow secondary education facilities in the R4 district subject to the 6 conditions, and approval of the conditional use permit to allow religious assembly in the R4 district subject to the 7 following conditions.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, Kathy, would you please take the vote?
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondal?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Approve 6-0.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 23, C7-23-148, applicant St. Patrick's Church of Elkhorn. Request approval of a major amendment to a conditional use permit to allow religious assembly in the R4 district. Property is located within an MCC, Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. The location is northwest of Big Elk Parkway and West Maple Road. May we hear from the applicant?
Good afternoon. Joe Katulak with RDG Planning and Design, architecture firm on behalf of St.
What was your
Patrick's.
first name? I'm sorry.
Joe Katulak.
Thanks, Joe.
Kotulak, located at 1302 Howard Street. Here to answer any questions. We are submitting this as part of a process that we understand working with Latitude Signage. who will be the installer for the project. That this is step one, followed by a ZBA approval to increase the amount of monument signage on our 12-acre site.
Thank you, Joe. Yep. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, close public hearing. May we hear from the city, Eric?
Yeah. So this is for 7 new monument signs for the St. Pat's New Church there on West Maple. You know, there's an increase in the overall budget. There is one monument sign that exceeds the height limit, so we are recommending to reduce that to 6 feet in height. That being said, staff recommends approval of the major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow religious assembly, subject to the 5 conditions in the recommendation report.
Thank you, Eric. Any comments from the board?
Just a question on the signage. 7 signs, a lot of signs, but are you calculating just the surface area of the signs to meet the requirements?
Yeah, so it depends on what type of signage there is. So there's different calculations that can be factored in. If it's a screen or if it's just channel letters, there's different methods of how that's calculated. But yes, if there's a monument, if there's a masonry base or something, that's not included as far as the overall budget. Does that answer your question?
7 signs. I know it's a big piece of property, but 7 signs seems like an awful lot of signage for the.
We do not have concerns. They're fairly small signs.
Okay.
This is much less in sign budget, just even from the previous case. So I know it sounds like a lot, but you know, there are different parking lots, and the applicant could speak to that, but staff is comfortable with the number of signs. We don't have a limitation in our code for that.
Okay. The only reason I ask is, you know, there was a time where we had sign clutter all over the city, right? Before we had the requirements that we put in place, and just wanted to make sure it wasn't too
Sure, and
obtrusive.
I'm happy to address that. So we have 2 sort of entrance monument signs, one to the east off of Big Elk Parkway, which is the major entry point to the site. A smaller one off of the west side, which is 189th, which is more of a neighborhood entry piece. And then so that's 2 of them. Only the one off Big Elk is internally lit in terms of a lighted sign. The rest are really just wayfinding for people entering the site. We have almost 5 acres of parking to be able to accommodate the size of worship space that it is. So it's about getting people parking as close as they can to the door, which is, as stated, are significantly smaller and almost pedestrian in nature, but do count based on the language as we understand it towards our signage increase requirements.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any other questions or comments? If not, can we have a motion?
A motion to approve the major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow religious assemblies subject to these 5 conditions in the recommendation report.
Second.
Kathy, please take the vote.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Connell? Yes. Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6 to 0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. All right, number 25, KC 14-24-244. The applicant is the property owner. The request for approval of vacation of the portion of Burt Street from 17th Street to Florence Boulevard, portion of 18th Street from Cumming Street to its southern terminus, portion of east-west alley from 17th Street to 18th, between Cumming Street and Burt Street, and a portion of the east-west alley from 18th Street to western terminus, south of Burt Street. Those are the locations. We'll hear from the applicant.
Yeah, Derek Scott, 6028 South 182nd Avenue, Omaha, 68135. Pardon me. Yeah, the 25 is requested property for building a practice field for Creighton baseball, which would also be used for College World Series practice and then intramural play. The alleys are to continue that connection between the bike path from east to west, and so doing pedestrian malls. And item 26, the section of Birch Street that we're requesting vacation is south of the softball field, and we're moving, you know, I was listening to the previous discussion about green space and walkability and those things, and So Creighton is moving our baseball and softball fields, or wishes to move our baseball and softball fields to build a 5-acre campus green where they currently are. And so this brings those out to Cumming, and you can see some of the construction going on now for the softball fields.
Eric, is Creighton baseball going to play their regular season games there?
No.
They're going to stay at TD?
We will stay at TD, Schwab, yeah, the Chuck, yeah, all those names, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
yeah,
That
we will
was
stay there
this
for
year.
games. I could see in the future if there were an early season, because we're going to do artificial turf, it's a lot more durable. But if there were an early season game where there was frost or snow or something that was a light snow, but we couldn't get on the Chuck, then there would have to be an agreement with them, because our agreement says we will play there. So to play anything here, we would need approval. But the goal is to really improve that drive down Cumming Street. And we have 2 properties to the north of us that we're working with, and made sure that, and they'll speak to that, the Grace Tabernacle and automatic printing that we have there in that plan.
When you say improve that drive on Cummings Street, what?
So we took down there was one that we recently painted gray, pre-engineered metal buildings. You know, there was a big wall of metal that you could not see into the campus. And so taking those down and improving those sight lines into what Creighton's been investing in over the past decade and a half, re-envisioning that campus.
Okay. So just the vision.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I don't know how to operate this thing, but I can show you a quick rendering of what it could look like. Do you know how to operate this?
Put your phone up and you
Can zoom it in.
Top, there's a scroller.
Oh, look there. Well, I think you can kind of see it there. So this area to your right here, and we're looking from the north, looking south. You can see the city. So this is the softball field here. To the right, this is 20th Street, Cumming Street in the foreground. We envision a team facility with batting cages, baseball team and softball team in there. That's not in this first phase. And then to the east, or to that side of that, is Grace Tabernacle, just on the edge of that, and then automatic printing on the other side of 18th Street. So that previously was pre-engineered metal buildings, and the big long yellow one that's there now, and the gray one we just took down.
You guys have done a great job with that area.
I know the softball's under construction.
Yeah.
What's your timing on the 2 fields?
So there's another property, Precision Tool. We close on that on the 25th of November, and once this is vacated, we think that the timing looks like it could, the earliest it probably is the middle of November, and then we would start selective demolition of our facilities that are still in the footprint, and then we're working with MUD over I think they said 1888 24-inch water line. It goes down 24th Street, so probably good time to replace part of that. So we're doing some of those utility changes and all that over the spring, but we have to be, to have a field, we're going to take down the field for the quad at the end of this summer coming up. So 25 CWS happens, the field comes down, we temporarily play on Schwab and practice on Schwab, and then summer of 26, when everybody shows back up in town, we've got to have this baseball field operable, so they've got a place to practice. So, and it's 5 blocks away.
Is that where the green space is going to be then? Where the old fields were?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So a 5-acre campus quadrangle, something the students asked for. About 10 years ago, we did a survey of all the students and said, hey, what are your priorities? What would you like to see? Green space was high on the priority. They said, look, we love being in a city, but we don't want to feel like we're living in the city. So green space was pretty high on the list.
Well, the softball field ready next year or not?
Yeah,
quite, or?
yeah. Good question, Eric. Summer 25, and then the press box that you see in the background there would follow in probably September. So they'll be ready for fall ball and practicing. So really ups the game for softball and their facility, and then that team facility is going to be really cool. And you can see it's designed. We've got some glass there. Our vision is that this could be a further part of the venue for the whole experience. And so you're at the Chuck 5 blocks away. You come up here, you can watch your team hit through the glass and the cages, and then you can come around to the other side and, and then watch them. There's some seating here, and it's not for games. It's really so if you're intramural team waiting or you're coming out to watch your team practice, that's what that's for.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Question for you.
Yep.
Pay for the MUD line replacement, or is MUD taking care of that?
We do, unfortunately, but so.
That's consistent.
Yeah. They said, look, it's, we're public
What
entity.
is the composition of that 1880 line?
So very likely some lead, a lot of iron, probably some cast iron, and then lead seals. But, through the years, you've got calcium and all kinds of other deposits. So there's nothing leaching out in it. They do tests of that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
So it's a 12-inch line now, huh?
24-inch right now. Yeah, 12-inch with all the calcium. But, 18th Street. Yeah, it goes from Cumming Street we would tie it from Cumming Street and then connect it back alley south of Burt, that section in there. And, when we talked to MUD, and they've been great to work with, when we told them the timing, they said, we better get to moving. To get that thing ready. But they said they're not having the issues of those old pipes. They said, if it was 1968, we'd have a concern, but they aren't seeing issues in those older pipes. So over-design it, right?
Thank you for the corrosion. All right, thanks, Eric.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other proponents wish to speak?
Julie Prescott Burgess, 1709 to 21 Cumming Street, where I work at Automatic Printing, where we have tenants in our buildings, and where I have lived for the last 6 years. We've been neighbors of many people down on Cumming Street since 1935. And for many meetings down here and in front of the city council, we've seen renderings and plots and plats that have indicated we aren't there anymore, but we are. As a matter of fact, we may have filled your mailboxes the last 2 months with political mailings, and we were happy to do so. For all that time, Creighton has gotten closer and closer to us and has really become one of the only neighbors left besides now Grace Tabernacle Church of God in Christ. And with the Precision Tool closing, we were the last 3 non-Creighton properties down in that district. And I'm here today, I told Derek after he's met with us a couple of times, to speak finally as a proponent for something that they're doing, because small as we are, we feel like we're as important a part of the city for 90 years as anybody else in the city down there, and they listen to us. They sat in my living room with me in our renovated home at 1709 Cumming Street. He sat in our office with it, my brother and I, Mike, who run this as a 3rd-generation family business. And when we heard about the vacation of the alleys in 18th Street, this was kind of a concern to us because the 18th Street is our west entrance into our parking lot, and the alley that runs between 18th and 17th is the south side of our building where our loading dock is and where the driveway and garage are to my home. And so this concerned us, but he allayed our fears. We've had some wonderful conversations about how they're going to help accommodate our needs there still so we can keep operating. They own a small building, also goes back to the 1800s, I think, that's attached to one of our buildings that will have to come down to accommodate the curvature of 18th Street back into the alley so that we will still have access. And we've had wonderful conversations. We're grateful that they listened. I'm sorry they were forced to listen to me preach to them on Jesuit values. And because they're in a neighborhood where there are neighbors. And as I've tried to explain many times standing before authoritative bodies like this, the neighbors down there are the homeless, the helpless, the last, the least, and the lost, and they need to be looked out for too. We try to do that in our business, in our little piece of land, and I know that Schlegel Center does good work down there too. So I'm standing here just to say thank you for letting me stand here and say, yes, I'm speaking as a proponent of this and we look forward to it. Also, just for the record, I will be able to see practice ball games from the deck on my house looking down into the ballpark. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie. All right, thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? I don't see very many people here. Any opponents? Seeing none, we'll hear from the city. Eric?
Yeah, so we discussed this in the pre-meeting. Obviously, there's a lot of bullet point items because it is fairly complex with, you know, the bikeway and the pedestrian access and the sewers and you know, property owners and, you know, Creighton's been a great partner with this and they've been coordinating on all these specific details with Public Works and planning staff. So we're appreciative of that. That being said, staff recommends approval of the vacation of a portion of Burt Street from 17th Street to Florence Boulevard, a portion of 18th Street from Cumming Street to its southern terminus, a portion of East-West Alley from 17th Street to 18th Street between Cumming Street and Burt Street, and a portion of East-West Alley from 18th Street to its western terminus south of Burt Street, subject to the 20 conditions in the recommendation report.
Thank you, Eric. Any other comments? If not, can I have a motion?
I move approval of the vacation of a portion of Burt Street from 17th Street to Florence Boulevard, a portion of 18th Street from Cumming Street to its southern terminus, a portion of East-West Alley from 17th Street to 18th Street between Cumming Street and Burt Street, and a portion of East-West Alley from 18th Street to its western terminus south of Burt Street, subject to the 20 conditions outlined in the recommendation report.
Thank you for the motion. We have a vote. Kathy?
Tondel?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Okay, then number 26 we've kind of discussed. It is number C, 14-24-245, same property owner Creighton. Request approval of the vacation of a portion of Burt Street right-of-way located between 20th Street and Florence Boulevard. Any further comments from the applicant? If not, any opponents? No? Eric, you're from the city.
Yeah, staff recommends approval of the vacation of a portion of Burt Street right-of-way located between 20th Street and Florence Boulevard, subject to the 18 conditions in the recommendation report.
Do we have a motion?
Motion approved. The vacation of a portion of Burt Street right-of-way located between 20th Street and Florence Boulevard, as well as the 18 recommendations in the report.
Second.
We having a vote or a motion and a second. Kathy, would you record the vote?
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Okay, that concludes our agenda. We need to have a motion on the minutes of the pre-meeting and the meeting from the October meeting.
Move to approve the minutes from the pre-meeting, September pre-meeting, no, October pre-meeting and the October regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
We need a motion to adjourn. We have a vote, please.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Sotolongo? Yes. Moore? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
Motion adjourned, or meeting adjourned.